What comes next for Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola? Matt Rhule has thoughts. We do as well. Coming back.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert.
All right, welcome in. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Connor Happer, 1620 The Zone, with me this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Good morning, Connor. On Tuesday, we heard from Matt Rhule, took the big stage at Nebraska football headquarters, along with Dane Key, the new wide receiver in town, Rocco Spindler, the offensive guard, transfer from Notre Dame, and then Oklahoma transfer, Dasan McCullough, who's going to play jack linebacker at Nebraska. So we'll talk about what those guys had to say, their early impressions of Nebraska. They talked about the mat drills. We got to ask questions about the mat drills. That's maybe my least favorite subject to ask players about.
Great take.
How are the mat drills going?
How are workouts going? As they go good, we're working hard, you know?
Yeah. Also got 40 minutes from the head coach. I don't know that was planned, that it was going to last 40 minutes, but a couple of his questions were in the 5 to 6 minute range, or a couple of his answers were in the 5 to 6 minute range. So we'll talk about some of that on the show this week, if not today. I want to start with the quarterback. Matt Rhule had some comments about Dylan Raiola and his continued progression through the offseason. So let's just play that and then come back and talk about it.
As a freshman, I think he did a lot of things that were not a lot of freshmen do. I think he was really up there in terms of passing percentage and all those different things. And then there's things I know as a freshman he would love to improve upon. So he's going into year 2 now. Last year, as a highly recruited freshman, I think at this time you saw him trying to, keep his voice quiet and just earn everyone's respect. I think now, he has to step up and lead when able. He's really working on his body composition. He won't be a great quarterback at 240 pounds, right? So getting his body composition to one where he can be fleet of foot, where he can slide nimbly and move within the pocket, where he can convert third downs with his feet. I think that's something that we're all bought into and he has to continue to do. So there's things he needs to work on.
Well,
what do you think there?
He didn't have to mention that he wouldn't be a good quarterback at 240 pounds. Not to say he is 240 pounds at the moment, but that's kind of the intimation from the
seems like a fairly specific number to bring up.
Yeah, it is. So there's been a lot made of that sort of this offseason, and Dylan's kind of around and doing whatever. And so this is what we're talking about with him. And you don't know until you know too, right? Like they definitely clearly want him to step into a leadership role. But this is something that we've been talking about for a while. It doesn't seem, if we're still kind of talking about like, hey, he's got to do this, it doesn't seem like completely natural to him. And there's the weight piece of this thing as well, which is fascinating for Rhule to mention.
What I don't love is the suggestion from some observers of and some people who are reacting to this, the suggestion that because they're talking about Dylan's weight, that he must not be working hard in the offseason. Those two things don't necessarily equate with each other. And we haven't heard anything from Matt Rhule or from anyone associated with the Nebraska football program. In fact, we've heard the opposite.
Right.
We've not heard anything saying, "Oh, Dylan needs to pick it up in his in the mat drills," or like he's not working hard enough in the weight. No, it's like when I come into, people are saying, we heard from Tequil Shorts, I believe it was, a couple weeks ago, last week, and he said, when I come into the weight room to get a workout at 5:30 in the morning, there's Dylan. So I think he's fully committed and has been fully committed, more than fully committed. I mean, this is the guy who we know has maximized use of the new facilities at Nebraska as much as anyone in the program. That doesn't always mean that he's going to be the player in the best shape. Like, there are still things he can do, yes, to probably improve the way that he's working out and get himself in the best shape. But for a guy who does all of the training and all of the stuff that he does, whether it's with Bobby Strope in the offseason or John Christensen, his throws coach, I would expect that by the time he gets through this offseason, this whole issue that we're talking about is not going to be an issue. Like, I think he'll be at the weight that they want him to be at. Now, can he go out and do the things that they want him to do if he's 220 pounds? Can he go and move the chains and pick up first downs on 3rd and 3? That's to be determined. I'm not concerned, though, about the condition he's going to be in, because like this is like a professional thing to him. So like, he's not a finished product right now. Remember, he's also 19, living on his own for the first time. Maybe he needs to eat all of his meals at the training table,
right?
Raising canes for dinner. Like, these are things that all college freshmen go through, and I think he's going to come out of it fine.
Yeah. So I guess the response, like, you're right. Everything that we've heard from the coaches is, he's the first guy in, and he is working hard. Well, I guess the response to that is, well, why is he 240 pounds then? If that's the case, like, and some of that is, like Rhule said, body composition. That's a little different than he's just like, sloppy and out of shape. Like, some of this he can't probably control either, because he's just naturally, he, like, look at his dad, right? He's an offensive lineman in the NFL for a long time. Like, that's, some of that is just that piece. So he was always going to be a little bit heavier, but this does seem to, track a little more than they want to.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. Have you seen Dominic? Have you seen Donovan? Like, yeah. The genetics are there to there are offensive linemen in his family. So it's probably not as easy for him to maintain 220, 225 as it might be for the guy standing next to him in the quarterback meetings. And that's fine. Like, he's going to have to work harder at it. And, I think in the end, it's going to be a benefit for him, because it's going to take discipline. It's going to take focus. And again, because of what we've seen with him, because of the growth that he has made as a quarterback from the time he was 14 years old until now he's 19, like, I fully expect that he's going to be able to tackle this challenge and come out just fine.
All right. So what about the leader? Like, that is more material, the weight piece, and we'll see how that progresses. Unfortunately for him, now it's going to be something that gets in Rhule, he's going to get asked about this all the time.
I think they probably want it that way. Like, I don't think Rhule brings this up if they didn't make a decision. They know this is on the table now. And I think, and I think Dylan, at least in his camp, his dad, his his trainers, like, they're involved in this. Like, Matt Rhule doesn't go out and say that if they want to, if they're not okay with this being something that's discussed.
That's a good point. But one thing that has been sort of talked about all, throughout his freshman year, at the back end of his freshman year, in the offseason, anytime Rhule has talked, is the leadership aspect of this, the leadership component, where yesterday we talked about it on this show, just sort of the leadership vacuum that there is on the team at the moment. You lost all of it. Almost all of that structure that you had from last year that's been around for a long time. Raiola is a guy that they want to be the quarterback on your team is the guy that, the coach wants to have a voice and wants to, sort of drive the bus. It doesn't seem like it's particularly natural for Dylan to me. It's early for him, but it feels like it's more from Rhule. It seems like it's more of a, hey, we got to get him to do this and this and this. And if it were more natural to him, maybe you'd hear a different tone on it by now.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a just like, I think there's gray area. I don't think it's just like you're either a great leader or you're not a leader. I don't think that's the situation. I think there are people who are great leaders, and then there are people who within the structure of a team who just aren't cut out to do that. And then I think there are a lot of people who are in the middle, like who have some good leadership qualities and that need to be developed and enhanced, and like some of that's just going to come with experience and maturity. And then in other areas, like they're not as far along in the leadership. And I think Dylan fits in the middle. Like I think he's outgoing, like his personality is outgoing. Like he has no problem talking with us and answering questions from the media. Like he's good in the public eye. I think he's well liked around his team. Like he sets an example with how hard he works on being a quarterback. I think players tend to like him. So he's got a lot of things going for him in the leadership area. And then there's probably some things that we don't see as much, like when the cameras aren't on, where he has more work to do in becoming a great leader. Like, is he a natural leader? Yeah. I mean, I think he's in some ways, yes. And in some ways, probably it takes work for him. So, much like I said with the body composition situation, I think like he'll grow in this area too. And he's going to get better at that. I think he's on a track. Like no freshman or very few freshmen ever in the history of Nebraska football have been asked to come in and take the kind of leadership role that he was asked to take last year. And he did fine with it. Did he try too hard at times? Yeah, I think so. And then now he shouldn't have to try as hard because he's been around and he's been a starter for an entire season at the most important position.
Yeah. We'll see how it works. Like this is pretty general, but like in broad. But you mentioned trying too hard. Like that's one thing. Like you can't force yourself into it, as a leader on the team. It's sort of just like gets bestowed upon you, based on your standing and what you're able to do and how much, you want to grab it by the horns and stuff like that. So if it like, I don't need him to force himself into it. Like that's not what Nebraska needs. I don't think so. Maybe it's just a slower process for him. And for some quarterbacks, you could speak to this, Mitch. We've seen a lot of them over the years. Like there's been a lot of really good ones who just didn't have it. It just wasn't them. And they played and they were fine and they kind of led by example, but you do want your quarterback to be a voice. That's for sure. A trusted voice.
The best ones are great leaders. And you're right. You're 100% right. There have been some who've come through Nebraska who don't have those leadership qualities, and it's not that they're bad people or bad quarterbacks. It's just that isn't part of their makeup. And I do not think that Dylan fits into that category. Some of that is wanting to do it, and we've seen some quarterbacks, and if you go back 20, 25 years, 30 years, you see some quarterbacks who just don't want to do it. Dylan 100% wants to do it. And that's a big part of it. And I think in time he'll be I think he already is a leader in this program. And I think he'll be a very good leader in the program as time goes on. All right. When we come back, speaking of leaders, there's another one who's new to Nebraska, and Matt Rhule was talking about him on Tuesday as well. That's next. All right, but first, a message from TurboTax, our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers, no more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. So if you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head over to TurboTax.com today. Get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here in the Locked On Nebraska podcast. A couple more things from Matt Rhule at his expansive pre-spring press conference yesterday on the hiring of one, Mike Ekeler. We got a window into Rhule's brain a little bit, and his response to this question when he was asked about the process of sort of hiring him, and Rhule immediately responded with, well, it was my initial instinct to not hire him after all I heard from people around the program was that I should hire him. He's a bit of a contrarian in that way. And that is definitely a natural thing for him. But as time went on and he was looking for a special teams coordinator, Ekeler kept sticking in his mind.
So is Matt Rhule the guy where it's like, does that apply to other things in his football decisions? Like if one quarterback, if there's a quarterback controversy and like all of the public sentiment is on one guy, does Matt Rhule tend to favor the other one because he doesn't want to go with what people think? I mean, does this extend to other things in his arsenal?
I think it's pretty natural. Like, right. You hear all these people saying one thing and you're just like, all right, why is this a universally agreed upon thing? Can I poke a hole in this? I certainly do that all the time. So maybe I know that, that feels like how Rhule operates.
What's amazing is that he admits it, like that he admits it in front of the people that he admitted it in front of yesterday. Like not a lot of head coaches are going to be that transparent in this kind of a setting and say, yeah, I didn't want to hire this guy. You all told me I should. I had former players in my ear telling me I should, but a little bit of a look behind the curtains. Rhule said he heard the stories about Eck running the I-80 marathon, and Rhule said that kind of sounded like a lot for him for him, the head coach.
And it turned out that it was, because he told, well, maybe it's in the clip here as we hear from Matt Rhule talking about the hiring of Mike Ekeler and what he's brought to the program so far.
So, you guys that said to hire him, you guys were right and I was wrong. I want to make sure I give him his due, and I think since he's been here, it's just a ton of energy in the building. I'm a Northeastern guy. Like when he says to me, like, hey, Matt, how you doing today? I said, I'm good. He's like, we don't say good, we say great. And I'm like, heck, I'm from New York. I'm good. but I think that's going to be good for our guys. So I think he's, and what I like about him is he's an evaluator. We talk a lot about recruiters. The key is evaluation. And, him and Snow are two old school evaluators as they come in and see our players and, see guys like Bryce Turner. Bryce Turner is now 210 pounds. He was a 10-2 kid in high school, right? And he's now up to 210 pounds, still running close to 22 miles an hour. And, a lot of guys, well, what is he? Ekeler sees him and says, hey, I can use him like this, or I can use this guy like that. So that's really what I want. I want guys who find the players that we have and don't find what they can't do, but find what they can do.
All right, so that's Matt Rhule, and that little anecdote right there that you heard of, hey, how's it going this morning? I'm good. We don't say good, we say great. That's fantastic, and it's a really good window into that relationship. And I think it's sort of got like Odd Couple like kind of vibes. Rhule is sarcastic and sort of dry, and Ekeler is like punchy and like energetic and direct and on all the time. Rhule's like, I'm gonna walk around and carry my coffee, and it's 4:30. Please don't talk to me right now. and X like, what are you talking about? It's championship time. Screw you. So I think this is really interesting, and honestly, we said this all along. I think this is something that Nebraska kind of needed on their staff. So I'm looking to see how it evolves.
I want to believe that conversation actually happened, and it's not just like a symbolic of the way that the two of them interact, that it actually happened in a hallway at the Osborne complex, and Eck was like bounding down the hallway, like all but bouncing off the walls, and he saw Rhule and was like, how you doing? And it ensued just like Rhule described it there. Like, that's legitimately funny. There are some things that people say at press conferences that are only funny because they're said at press conferences, and they get a big laugh from the people, because it's like, I can't believe he said that in front of all these cameras. But it wouldn't really be funny like if he said that to you, if he was just Matt Jones and he said it to you out in the parking lot. That what he said there, that little story about Mike Ekeler, is legitimately funny, no matter the characters involved. And yeah, I mean, they're oil and water. Like when you put the two of that, especially at certain times of the day, it seems. And hey, like, we have talked through the offseason, starting with Dana Holgorsen and then moving on with Phil Snow, about how Rhule needs these people on his staff who challenge him. And I think Pat Stewart, who we'll talk about in the next segment, is probably another person who's coming in that can challenge Rhule. I don't know that we really saw Ekeler in that role until we kind of heard about this dynamic that Rhule described yesterday.
Ekeler is the kind of guy who you'll see from afar, and you haven't seen him in a while, but you wanted to like acknowledge him and say, hey, hey coach, hey, how you doing? And you'll say, I'm having the best day ever, but you like believe him, like he actually is having the best day ever, because that's like, he has to approach it that way. So, and that could be a lot. That could be a lot. And it's probably good for a football program. And it's definitely good to balance out Rhule. Not that he lacks energy, right? But he just approaches things in a different way. So yeah, I think that's really good. But obviously, most of the reason that Rhule hired him eventually at the end of the day was because of his results and what he's gotten on special teams, whether it be in his time at Tennessee or before. So like, there was that piece of it in the clip too. But I can feel the gears turning for like a skit, in my head, where these two are like the odd couple, and they're just
right.
like, they're just speaking a completely different language, walking around the football facility. Like I love that dynamic. It's very funny.
If Nebraska's social media team wanted to just like completely burn everything down, they would make a skit. Like, we would get that skit, like, but more exaggerated than that, with like not real life, where like Ekeler is, I don't know, like driving a motorcycle through the building or something like that, and Rhule comes in and he's bleary eyed and he's got his coffee, and they could have a lot of fun with that. Like, but hey, I mean, it's David City, Nebraska meets New York City. So these two personalities, like their backgrounds, everything about them could not be more different, but like, here they are together, and, seemingly a match made in heaven for what Nebraska needs on its special teams. I agree with you. Like, the big thing that we heard there was not the anecdote about the two of them meeting in the presumably early in the morning or whatever. It was Rhule saying that Ekeler is going to find players not because of what they can't do, but because of what they can do, to kind of paraphrase what the head coach said at the end there. And that's what you need on special teams. There's a defensive back or a linebacker on Nebraska's roster who's not yet ready to earn a black shirt in practice, and not yet ready to play meaningful reps against Michigan next September. But that guy can run down on kickoffs and blow up one aspect of the game. He can be a big factor for Nebraska in something that it needs to win in the Big Ten. And Mike Ekeler is hell-bent on finding that player and maximizing what he's got to give.
Plenty more to cover from Matt Rhule yesterday. We will get to it on the other side here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, a message from our friends from Factor. If you are looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. You will love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning. The convenience is unbeatable. There's no prep. There's no mess. and you get great food in just minutes. Eat smart with Factor, and we need you to get started today at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off and use code lockedoncollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code lockedoncollege50 off at factormeals.com. Once again, /lockedoncollege50 off. Get your 50% off plus free shipping on your first box from Factor.
Last segment of the show today. It is Wednesday, March 12th. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic with you alongside Connor Happer, 1620 The Zone. Thanks for joining us. We'll have our mailbag show as usual on Friday this week. Please get your questions in. If you're listening to this show, not if you're driving, but when you get to a stop, or if you're watching on YouTube, get us some questions. We'll take them on our Friday show. We're going to be recording that later today. So I'm sure everything, Connor, is going to be made irrelevant about all of the questions that we answer on the show, because Thursday is going to be the newsiest day in the history of Nebraska athletics. I'm technically on vacation starting Thursday. I will continue to do this. I will continue to be here and be alongside you to do the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But I'm matching up my vacation here this spring with, well, my kids' spring break and Nebraska's spring break, which starts after Friday. So I'm out of town. I'm on a plane Thursday. I think you're on a plane Thursday. If Troy Dannon calls a press conference, please don't. Please don't.
No, we don't need that,
Troy. Like, we don't need that. We don't need that this week. Like, you've had 3 days. It's still Wednesday, but
yeah,
this
was like the exact time last year where Trev left. So we don't need that. We do not need that at this moment. Just give us 72 hours. We'll be back and ready to cook on Monday. So yeah. Little long weekend for us here.
Yeah, I may have some remote location stuff going on Monday, Tuesday of next week. So we'll see how that looks. If there's like a cactus in the background, I'll try to get Jack Caglione to come join. He could be sitting alongside me or something like that.
That'd be awesome. Maybe you could just be out in the berm waiting to catch one of his 450-foot home runs or something like that. Be across the street.
Yes, across the street. All right. Speaking of baseball, Nebraska 10-1 win, much needed Tuesday at Haymarket Park against Wichita State. This is not the Wichita State of old with Gene Stevenson in the dugout, but it's a Division I program, and Nebraska needs victories. So the Huskers improved to 6-8 and will play the Shockers again on Wednesday night and then go to UCLA. I don't know. I haven't. How's UCLA? Anybody got any idea how UCLA is in the national standing this year?
I do
not.
They
don't have. I don't believe they have Garrett Cole on the mound, but I'm sure the Bruins are one of the better teams in the Big Ten.
13-4 already to start the season. They have already played a conference series. They played Michigan State. They played USC and Michigan. Those count as conference games? Okay. All right. This led me down a rabbit hole that I do not know the answer to, but they're 13-4 in the season, so they're pretty good.
What a great assignment for Will Bolt and his team in the middle of March to get out to LA and play conference games. Jackie Robinson Stadium, I think the stadium at there in Westwood is named after Jackie Robinson. So cool experience for the Huskers. This is the new Big Ten. So should we discuss quickly? I want to get to something that Matt Rhule said about Pat Stewart, but real quick. Any observations that you had about Dane Key, Rocco, Spindler, or Dasan McCullough from their comments that they made? Maybe we'll get more into this on the show Thursday, but anything that stood out to you about one of those three from Tuesday's comments?
Yeah, I think Rocco, Spindler seemed like I think Nebraska's getting the type of guy that they thought that they were getting, and a guy who's been a experienced player and a starter for a long time, and that he is mature, right? He seemed to have his priorities in order. Like, he knew kind of what he was looking for with his next opportunity in the transfer portal, and I think found it in Nebraska. And I think the same goes for Key, but in like a different, in a different way. I mean, he had the line about how Dana Holgorsen, told him hey, if you don't want to be the guy, like the guy, you stay at Kentucky, buddy. All right. And if you want to be the guy, you can come here to Nebraska. And Nebraska put a lot around Dane Key too. There's obviously you have DeKeel Shorts. There's another, I think, assistant who came along as well. So I think there's a lot there, and those guys are in a good position to succeed early.
There are a select few number of coaches that can say that and like have the cachet to be able to say, well, hey, if you don't want to be the guy, then just go ahead and stay at your little SEC program. But if you want to be the guy, and Key's like, what? I want to be the guy. Like
you gotta know who you're talking to, right? Like that challenge doesn't always land. So Key's the kind of guy that it lands with. So I think Nebraska got a good one there. It seemed like.
And it tells you that the dynamic is working between Holgorsen and DeKeel Shorts, because that Dana had like the full download of information about like how to push Dane Key's buttons when he was on that visit from Shorts. So that's already being put to good use. That relationship with Shorts and Holgorsen goes way back to West Virginia and of course to Houston. So yeah, I really like that moment. And Rocco is like, he's like folk hero. He could be carrying the axe for Nebraska if it had an axe that it used. Yeah. Last thing to get into on this Wednesday show, Nebraska, right before the press conference got underway, made official its hire of Pat Stewart as general manager from the New England Patriots. So that allowed Matt Rhule to be able to comment on the new head of Nebraska's personnel department. So what exactly is Pat Stewart going to do? I think we've kind of been wondering this. We've kind of had somewhat of an idea, but here's a question. And Matt Rhule's short answer, there's a much larger answer to this too, but here's just like a quick part of his description about Stewart's job.
Is he going to handle a lot of the transfer evaluations too? Because he kind of head up a scouting of being able to evaluate transfers as they go forward.
Yeah, I think he'll oversee. It's kind of like any other coordinator, right? It's the same as like Dana. It's the same as Butler. It's the same as Zach. He'll oversee it. He'll implement, the philosophy. The way we evaluate college players within the portal is going to be different than the way we evaluate high school players. And then the valuation that goes on top of that is completely different. Used to be, hey, we'd love to offer this guy a scholarship. We'd really love to have him. Now it's, hey, at what value financially are we willing to put on him?
Yeah, that's a huge part of this.
Yeah, I found that part just fascinating, and it will be fascinating moving forward. And I think it explains a lot about, like, you may be scratching your head when you watch what Nebraska's doing in recruiting right now, because there are players out there, some close to home, who are being offered by programs all around the country, and Nebraska's just kind of sitting there like, I'm sorry, like we would probably like to take you and would have taken you in previous years, but like, how does this fit? We don't know how this fits into our valuation, into the rev share world.
Yeah, you're gonna have to fit a really inside of a more specific box if you're a recruit or if you're a transfer than you've ever had to fit in. Not only from a what you look like athletically, how you project, and all these things, but also what position you play and how competitive the other offers are for you, whether it's in the transfer portal or as a high school recruit. So it's fascinating that Stewart's going to kind of be overseeing that. Obviously, Rhule will have a really heavy hand in that conversation as well, because he's the head man. But it's like, we got a front office guy basically running Nebraska's, operation up top. That's not a bad resource to have right there in terms of how to spread out the money and where your money is best spent.
Yeah, this is the world that Stewart lived in with the Patriots and with the Eagles and in his time. And he was with the Patriots recently, but also spent time with New England when it was the New England of old, the New England that we grew up watching Belichick and Brady and yeah, they had star power, but the thing that won them Super Bowls as much as anything else. So, okay, Brady won them Super Bowls, but but
Yeah.
but the thing that also won them Super Bowls was the ability to find players and find value, and to do it in a way that other organizations just weren't doing at that time. So I can't wait to hear from Pat Stewart and on what his philosophy is with Nebraska football, and how that all fits together, the valuation piece and everything around it. So hopefully this spring we'll get a chance to sit down with him. I would imagine that will happen. So, all right. Remember, mailbag questions for Friday. We'll be back with you on Thursday for another episode before that. For now, thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast with Isaac and Andy. Don't wait for March Madness to start. Be the most informed college basketball fan right now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.